questions, please ask. Mike, you want to come down?
Oh, sure.
You can sit or you can stand.
I'll sit unless this way I'll feel like I'm on. So is this like, are people going to fire away at me, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to give us an idea of the scope of the money of the music in the publishing business.
Sure.
How much money are we making globally or in the U.S. with publishing music?
Okay. Right. So just a little bit more background. Hello, everybody. Anybody taken music finance already? No. Wow. Good. Could be interesting. Well, music publishing. Right. So there are thousands of music publishers out there. I don't know, how much you guys have gotten into it, but literally there are thousands of music publishers. Some music publishers have only the stuff that they themselves have written and decide to publish. And they control their own little publishing company, and maybe they're affiliated with a major or whatever. But there are literally thousands of music publishers. But there are only 4 major music publishers. The 4 major music publishers are Universal, EMI, Warner Chappell, and Sony ATV. So just for some background, so maybe you guys are interested in stuff like this. Sony ATV, they have Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift. They're on the rise. They got some great new signings, and they also have 50% of all the Beatles stuff through a joint venture they had with Michael Jackson before he passed. Well, I guess the joint venture now is with the estate of Michael Jackson. So Sony ATV, great company, on the rise because they've got some of the stuff that's really selling now, and that makes a big difference because the music industry is a little tougher nut to crack than it's been in the last few years. EMI Music Publishing used to be #1 until we merged with another company and got bigger than them. EMI Music Publishing is a company that's struggling because they're very closely aligned to EMI Records, and EMI Records has had a really particularly difficult time because of, they were sold a few years ago to a company that acquired a lot of debt to try to restructure the company, and they're having trouble paying the debt. So, it doesn't take a finance major to realize if you get too big of a mortgage on your house, it gets tough to make the payments. And that's the problem, I think, right now. But EMI, another solid company, the publishing company has 2 million copyrights. And when people say 2 million copyrights, usually everybody goes, wow. Maybe 250, 300,000 of them make real money. The others are copyrights that songwriters have turned in and maybe never got exploited, never got recorded, nothing, but they still claim they have over 2 million copyrights because it sounds impressive and that sort of thing.
That's what you have, right? About 2 million?
Yeah, well, we're the largest now. We almost have 2.5 million now. We have about 650,000 songs that earn money. And when we say earn money, we mean earn significant money, because you'll have thousands and thousands of songs that earn less than $10.
What's significant?
I think any song that earns more than $10 we count as a song that earns money. So you get a lot of songs that for some reason get registered and earn pennies, and really, it might actually be an error that they got credited with $5 of royalties from Italy or some territory. But so we usually look at $10, $20, and anything over that, we consider that to be a song that's earning money. So you have, and anyway, the last major besides Universal would be Warner Chappell. Warner Chappell is aligned with the Warner Music Group. They have another solid catalog. Their big song is Happy Birthday. Believe it or not, most people don't realize Happy Birthday is a copyrighted work. I can't believe it is.
It's not in the public domain.
And that's what everybody says. It's not in the public domain. But it's probably also the most infringed copyright in the world, because everybody uses it and nobody pays. So it's great that they say they have it. It's in some of their press releases, but my guess is it doesn't make them a ton of money, because nobody asked for a license. I'm going to sing Happy Birthday at my son's birthday party this weekend. Can you give me a gratis license? No, but that doesn't really happen. So then there's Universal. I got very lucky. This is what you guys can aspire to in the real world. I got very lucky. I graduated school. I went into an accounting firm. I wanted to be in music, so I made sure I got to work for a music company, and I eventually got hired by the smallest of all the music publishing companies. At the time, it was called MCA. MCA Music Publishing. There were 6 multinational companies. We were number 6. We were trying harder than anybody, and then in 1998 they bought Polygram Music, and then in 2000 they bought Rondor, and these are all huge companies. And then in 2006, literally 4 years ago, we bought BMG Music, which was just as big as we were, and I've managed to survive all those, which is is a big deal when you talk about all those mergers. Because why do people merge? Anybody have any idea? Why do you merge with another company?
To expand territory.
To expand. That's a great one. To expand, to get their catalog. They've got songs. You got songs. You jam them together, but you're missing a big piece. Anybody? Eliminate redundancy. So you got 2 CFOs. It was me and the other guy, and we're both sitting there going, "Who's going to get the job?" You know, you only need one. And so what they do is they say, "Well, these guys made 100 million, and these guys make 100 million. You put them together, we're going to make 250 million, because we're going to save $50 million of duplicate stuff." That's why a lot of mergers and acquisitions happen. That's why there's a lot of that happening in the music business, because there needs to be more of that contraction so that you can continue to, exploit copyrights to the fullest advantage and still have a healthy bottom line. So anyway, so I lucked my way to the CFO, head of operations role at the largest music publishing company in the world. Our global revenues are about 700 million euros. That's gross revenue coming in the door. Most of you guys probably have taken the basic stuff, so you know a lot of that money we have to pay out to writers and co-publishers, people who own copyrights, people who have an interest in the music. So in a normal sense, and so we've got thousands of deals. Each one of those deals dictates how much we get to keep and how much we get to pay the writer or the co-publisher. So it's difficult to generalize, but you can, in a typical co-publishing deal, we would keep 25% and send 75% to writers. So you can get an order of the magnitude of the company there. But 700 million euros is probably about $900 million in US dollars by today's exchange rates. I might be off a little bit, but that's pretty big. So that's kind of the order of magnitude of music publishing. Music publishing, it's also been a good business to be in, because it's not as volatile as the record company, right? Record companies are very hit driven. You sell, in the old days, a recorded music company could sell 1 million records, and maybe they made, forget that you paid $12.98 or whatever you paid, they might have made $4 or $5 an album. That might have been their profit. So 1 million albums, $5 million profit sounds like a pretty good deal. As long as you know how to sign the guys who sell 1 million records, you got it accomplished. Publishing is a lot more difficult, because you don't make that kind of money for 1 million units. Publishing's about songwriting, right? So 1 million records, what's the first thing you need to know? How many songs on the album do I have? Like, if I'm a songwriter, if I wrote one song, I make 1/15 if there are 15 songs on the album. So if you control the whole album, obviously you make more if you wrote every song on the album. So this is why a lot of artists nowadays like to write and have a percentage of their music, because they can tend to make more from publishing. But the first, record companies don't care. They sell 1 million records. They make money. Publishing companies, they sell 1 million records. How much of the album do we control? How many songwriters do we have on it? How many songs are ours? Let's make believe they're all ours, and let's make it easy. Make believe there's only 10 songs on the album. You guys have probably done all this, right? Statutory rate, 9 cents a song. It's probably 90 cents an album. You made a whopping 90 grand for that 1 million. So you can tell $4 million on the record side, profit for selling 1 million albums, publishing company, a lot less. And you don't get to keep all that. You got to pay the writer. So how do publishing companies make so much money? Scale. You know, you own that tens of thousands of copyrights. Simply because an artist only has one song on an album, it doesn't mean that the publisher, there is still, that entire album is still published. There's usually just 15 different publishers. You know, 2 publishers own the first song, another publisher owns the second song, blah, blah, blah. So it's really how much of that album you have. So, and the examples I gave you before, Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift, those are 2 of the big success stories now. They both write. I believe Taylor Swift does a lot of 100% writing, so she can do really well publishing-wise. And Lady Gaga does a lot of co-writes, and so she does really well publishing-wise too. And the big thing now, again, so again, just to finish the circle of the economics of the publishing industry, so that 700 million euros or $900,000, that's all our income. So that includes mechanicals, performance, synchronization, and print, and actually we have a classical music division. So we have what's called rights and rental, which is, do you get into any of that in your course?
Well, not so much in our
Right.
course, but the legal issues course, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a classical business as part of our business, and even if you don't like listening to classical music, we like the classical business because there's a whole aspect of the classical business that is not really tied to the economy or how the music business is doing. It's called rights and rental, and really what they do is they literally rent scores to orchestras. So if you have the New York Philharmonic is coming and they're going to do West Side Story, they have to rent the score so that all those guys sitting on the stage can put it right in front of them and play it. So again, it sounds like a small business, but when you have 50 of the most famous classical composers in the world, it can really add up, and it's a good business to have because it's solid. Anyway, the last thing I'll say, and then maybe I'll let you guys throw some questions at me. That might be easier, certainly for me, is we also have another aspect of our company that we're getting more deeply into because of what's going on in the music industry, and that's called production music. And production music is, they used to call it elevator music. It's not elevator music, but like when you shut the elevator doors, you'd hear the music piped in, and it was really bad, and it was something you probably wouldn't buy. That's production music. Or when you're watching the news, if you watch the news, you know, the music that you hear in the background, that's production music. Somebody made that music. And this is kind of like what I like to call, you know, the cloud of the music industry. Most people don't realize every time they hear those notes, somebody made it, somebody produced it, somebody wrote it, somebody's getting paid, somebody owns it. And that's a really lucrative part of the business now because say you're putting together a movie and you have a big budget movie and you want to put music in it. You come to us, we could give you California Dreamin'. Of course, that's going to cost you an arm and a leg because that's a big popular song. If you want a license for California Dreamin', you're going to pay top dollar. And then the next thing they'll do is what they do all the time is they go, oh, we don't have the music budget for that type of a fee. You know, our music budget's only X. And you know, they play games. They probably have a $500,000 music budget, but they tell you it's 20% of that, so that you give them deals. But you know, when they can't afford California Dreamin', we immediately go, well, I have this song in this library that you can have that kind of captures the mood and feel, but you can have that for $5,000. And a lot of times you find people, because of the tight budgets around film production and recession and everybody trying to be a little tighter, some of our core business in the film and TV is shifting over to library. But library, really, it's not elevator music. It's well produced. The only thing is it's not popular music. It's nothing you'd hear on the radio. It's a lot of times it's rock music. It's got vocals. It sounds like something you'd listen to in a club, but it's by a nameless, faceless guy in a studio who decided to put it together just to create a library to hopefully sell it to television production companies, NBCU. A lot of the TV companies like NBC, Universal, all of them will use tons of library music.
I'm sorry. But
Sure.
Do you have this thing, these library composers, they work on spec, or do you pay them a contract? Or, I mean,
That's a great question. Most of the library work we do, and this is why it's good for the company, it's work for hire. You guys familiar with work for hire? So we don't have to pay them ever again. So and they like it because it's steady work. It's as opposed to having a working artist who's going out on tour, is trying to sell records, blah, blah, blah. You have a working musician who goes into the studio every day, creates music. He's almost like an employee. So it's all work for hire, and the company winds up owning the master and the publishing, and and you usually wind up licensing it to you license it en masse. Nobody buys one track. You literally say, here's 500 CDs of stuff. If you take it for 3 years, give me $10,000 a year, and let me know if you use anything. And basically that $10,000 a year is what we call a blanket fee. It covers everything in the catalog, and they never have to pay us another dime. Does anybody know why I want to know if they use anything, though? If they never have to pay us another dime, why do I want to know what they used? Anybody? Can anybody think of it? That's a tough question. Don't worry.
worth more to you for the next sale?
Well, usage information. It's always good to have data. Good answer. It's always good to have data on what songs people like. Maybe we need to write more songs.
From a rights standpoint.
Yeah, there you go.
Why do you want to know if it's being used?
So if he wants to do his track.
What?
You have to pay the writers.
Well, not if it's a work for hire.
Oh, yeah.
But certainly, but by the way, it's not all work for hire. So certainly we need to know that information if there's actually a writer who gets an entitlement. But did you want to give it a shot?
I was going to say, perhaps if over the long run, given this music out to a lot of people, and there's a particular writer who's written a lot of the songs,
That's another data issue, which is very important. But
Too hard.
yeah,
Like,
Too
did
hard.
they put your name on it?
sorry.
Did they put your name? Yeah, it's by the head.
Well, that's a great answer. That wasn't the one I was looking for, but yes, if you actually go if you're one of those nerds like me, who goes to a movie and waits till the end just to see the music credits. I do this all the time because I like to see the music, who wrote it, where they got it from. You'll see 5 or 6 production music libraries just listed in there, so you do get credit. That's a good, and it's important for the library guy to say, hey, I got these 5 songs in in Batman, and that's great PR and brand value. Anybody else? Well, it's for performing rights, because if they actually use something, we can register that use with the performing rights organization, and then we'll get paid the performance royalties. So so a lot of these guys will take the library off, and they'll never tell us what they use. If we don't know, we won't get the performing money. And a lot of times that money can be very substantial. There are even in the United States libraries that we call buyout libraries. These are people who give you their library for free. You don't have to pay me a blanket license over 3 years. Just take this, please use stuff. And why do they do that? For the performance royalties. Because they can make a significant amount of money just if stuff gets used through the PROs. Anyway, so that's Universal, about 2.5 million copyrights, 900 million of revenue, 770 employees worldwide, more than half of those in the US. And we have what we call core, classical, and production music are really the segments of our business. It's integrated but very different. And classical music is very European-centric. For some reason, I don't know why, but classical music makes tons of money in Italy, France, Germany, but really very little in the US. It's because we're all, lowbrow, I guess. I'm not sure. Sorry? That's a great, you never,
Well,
that's,
it's roots music for Europe.
it's what?
It's roots music for Europe.
Okay, right, yeah,
It's all based on European culture. It's out of their culture, so
right.
if we have roots music here, it's just a different version.
And half the money we make worldwide in classical is Italy. So anyway, that's Universal Publishing. I've been there for 16 years, and like I say, seen the company grow quite a bit. Things, things are a little difficult right now for the music industry in general, but that's only when you think about the music industry. Most people think about recorded music companies. Recorded music companies still have not found their way, and they're struggling with it. You can read about it every day in the paper or whatever, but music publishing companies are still looked at as the solid brother foundation that is not nearly as volatile as the record companies. Record companies are having a tough time, and I can tell you why. And here's the reason why. How many people here have actually bought a CD in the last 6 months? Okay. Well, okay. How many people have bought a full album download in the last 6 months? Oh, okay, good. See, the music, even when and how many people have downloaded on one of those sites that don't charge 99 cents? See, well, here's the issue: is the music industry's become almost a very digital industry and a very singles industry, you know. And many years ago, I think the record industry tried to kill the single because they liked people buying albums because they made more money. And now it's kind of come full circle because
Bundling of the album is what kind of has a lot to do with the financial analysis of the music business now. Because if you're only buying 2 songs and you're spending $2 or $3 on that as opposed to $18, now and they unbundle the records, now you just buy the $2 worth, then all that other profit goes away.
right.
So that's an 87% drop right there. And so the music business hasn't fallen 87%, but it's fallen about 8% every year for the last 10 years.
It's also created a whole cultural change around music, around how people listen, sample music. It used to be people, you know, that people would buy the whole album. Well, A, they had to,
Yeah.
but B, they enjoyed it. It was more of like, I'll check out all these other songs. But now they sample them. They'll listen to it, they sample to it, and once they're absolutely sure, maybe they'll buy another track. If you get to the 3rd track, maybe you have somebody who buys does the entire album download. But I would say, and I don't know if there are any statistics on this, but I would say very small, only the diehard fans are the ones who are buying full album downloads immediately right off the spot. So clearly that's, but the good news is publishing doesn't rely entirely on those revenue streams. We have performance income and synchronization and print and rental and production music libraries, and all of those are not correlated directly to those types of issues. So
How much money would a hit record make? A number 1, top 10 hit. How much money would that make?
in Oh, okay, in total publishing. Well, it's easier to answer if you're asking me how much its performance income it's going to make. Because a number 1 hit song, it can be number 1 and sell very few albums. Or it could sell millions of albums and not have a lot of performance income. Like, up until recently, that was Eminem. Eminem used to sell tons of albums. You'd never hear him on the radio, because he didn't have a lot of stuff that wasn't bleeped every other word. And then they'd ask him to go in and re-record, like his first album, I think he recorded 2 versions, a clean and an explicit. The clean was simply so he could get radio play. And he only got radio play on 1 song. I think that was My Name Is, right? So then the subsequent albums, he refused to do a clean version. So what happens is he doesn't get a lot of radio play. He doesn't get a lot of performance income. But now that's completely changed. We actually publish Eminem, I'm happy to say, knock on wood. So, this new album of his is huge, and massive performance. A number 1 song, if you control 100% of the song, a number 1 song, actually a top 5 song could get you $750,000 gross. And that's just publisher share, so double that, $1.5 million, because the writer gets their share directly, right?
That's
So,
not
what?
just performance
That's performance. If it's a number one song, and a number one song for a number of weeks, okay, you can get 500,000 to 750 publisher share for 100% of the song. Yes, it's a lot of money. But, you know, there's not a lot of number one songs that stay number one for 12, 15 weeks. That's A. And B, performing rights societies now are paying less and less for those songs because terrestrial radio is another troubled industry. So I don't know how many people listen to satellite radio. How many listen to Pandora? Who listens to 92.7? Exactly. So this is terrestrial radio, and terrestrial radio has been the backbone of performing rights income for years, and their revenues are down. And since they pay a percentage of those revenues for rights to music, the songs make less. Of course, they're making up for some of it in satellite, but that's an emerging media, and it's really not worth a lot of money yet. So, and again, to answer your number one song thing, you know, that's, if it's performance, if you sell 1 million albums, you make 90 cents a record, that's $900,000 of gross, and then usually that gets split between the publisher and the writer. If the publisher gets 25%, then you would get 75% of that for 1 million records. So that's $600 and something thousand for 1 million records. But you won't see any of that money because you probably took a $3 million advance from the label to record the album in the first place, so they'll recoup all that against your against your recording. You guys all went through that already, right? So yeah, so but you can make as a publisher, you know. So when we control copyrights, like somebody who doesn't need an advance, like Paul Simon, or everybody know who Paul Simon is? Whew. Okay, Paul Simon or Bruce Springsteen or one of the old geezers who don't need advances anymore. Those guys just have catalogs that just make, you know, money. And I think I said this last time I was here, and I don't know if any of you guys were in the room last time I was here, but we have dozens of writers. It's pretty freaky. Dozens of writers who make a very good living on one song. And that song was written in the 70s. You know, I mean, Dreamweaver by Gary Wright. You guys know Dreamweaver? Okay, Dreamweaver. He has another song. He's got 2 songs. But, but, I mean, he makes a very good living off that song. American Pie, Don McLean. Which one? American Pie. Yeah, maybe. It must be. He does pretty well. He has like 9,000 acres in Maine. Sits by the fax machine waiting for us to fax, you know, sync requests. Hey, we want to use this in a movie. Okay, comes right back. We don't. It's like sitting by the fax machine, you know. Sometimes we think he's just waiting for him to come through. Yeah, you have a question?
I was wondering how realistic that is, though, in the sort of modern era, because a lot of these 70s songs, you had the inflation of people from the baby boomers generation, and so there was a lot of money coming in that situation, and that sort of continues all the way through in the 90s, and now we're in a sort of situation where how realistic is it that you would write a song, even of that quality, and be able to own 9,000?
Well, it's very realistic that you would sell 1 million records. It's probably unrealistic that you'd get paid for them. That's the only difference between now and the 70s. I mean, it really is. Because now, many people don't buy music anymore. And many people sample music. They might buy one track off the album instead of the whole album. And it's just that analysis we made here. So yes, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. So how do artists make money now? Anybody idea? So they can't sell, who said it? Perform live. They go out on concert tour, and now if you follow the paper, the live industry is now taking a little bit of a hit. Why are they taking a little bit of a hit? Because Bruce Springsteen, wasn't he just here? Paul McCartney, $300 a ticket again? These guys don't sell records anymore, and the publishing income is coming down, so they all go out on tour, especially not Paul McCartney as much. He's got money, although he's got to pay off the ex-wife, right? But I'm sure that was the Heather tour, right, or whatever. But No, but the real issue is that the B-level artists, the guy who've made their living on the handful of songs, they have to do, they do these nostalgia tours or package tours, of these groups from the 70s or 80s, and they used to do it every 3 or 4 years. And every time they came around, and I'll use me as an example, I'd go, wow, that's great, they're going to come around again, I'd love to see them. But now they come around every year. And so finally you have to go, I just saw them. I don't want to drop $150 for a ticket to see them again. And so now a number of concert tours have been canceled in the last, but the ones that have been being canceled are the ones where they're looking for exorbitant ticket prices, like the Eagles is one example. I mean, Hell Froze Over in 1990. Does everybody know what that means? Hell froze over in 1990, and it's frozen over 15 times since then. I mean, they had a tour called Hell Freezes Over because they said they would never tour again, and they've toured 25 times since then. So and why? Because this is how they make their money now, and a lot of the guys in the band who are not Don Henley, they need to tour, they need to make money. Don Henley or Glenn Frey. The rest of them need to go out on tour and make money. That's how they make a living. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle, Yeah.
I have a question regarding the cycle that you pointed out there. Would you say that it's possible that the cycle is created because the incredible scope of current copyright law causes people to sort of keep fighting for what they already did as opposed to creating something new? So for instance, a lot of these bands are doing reunion tours as opposed to the musicians either creating new projects or the bands continuing to write as they did before. And as a result, because they have all this massive copyright protection, they fight for it, and so they just keep playing the same thing. I mean, how long? Like, I mean, you just said it yourself. How many years will you keep going back to see the same show? So I mean, I'm just wondering if you think that the excessive amount of copyright protection that's currently in the system is actually causing the problem. Because the incentive is keep doing what you already did, not do something new, and the public doesn't want to see that. I mean, like the Doobie Brothers are playing this weekend in Gretna. They're playing Saturday in Gretna.
But that's a reunion tour, and Michael McDonald's back in the band. I want to go see that. Actually, that'll be really good. That'll be really good. They haven't toured together before. Well, I think it's fine. I think you were a little. There were two comments in there. That one that I want to, you're talking to a publisher, so I don't think there's enough copyright protection. Okay, and not only that, if I wrote a song, I want to know it's going to be around forever. And by the way, I'm not just talking about copyright protection on the publishing side. I'm talking about on the label side too, because I think isn't it like 50 years it used to be, or 50 years it was in the UK, was copyright law for master recordings. So the Beatles copyrights are all about to go into public domain. If it, what? Elvis already went. All right, because it's 50 years from first publication. So, but Elvis is thank God he's dead, because this would have killed him if it happened while he was alive. I mean, it's just wrong. It's just wrong that while Paul McCartney or anybody is alive, in my opinion, that all of a sudden the product they created can be given away for free.
You're saying just in England?
I think those are, I'm not sure. I am not a copyright expert, and I'm certainly not a UK copyright expert, but I know those masters are UK, under UK law. So, and it was 50 years from, so their first recordings were 63, so they're set to expire in like 2013, and there's a big legal fight right now to try to extend the copyright law. So, but that was your first question. I think your second question was about, additional product, and I know you guys know this, but if you think about it this way, in the old days, in the 70s, bands would tour to promote an album. Now they put out an album to promote a tour. The album means nothing. They know they're not going to make the money they used to make. They'll make money, but they know they're not going to make that much money. They put it out so they have new stuff to play when they go. But then you go to see Bruce Springsteen or whoever you like. You want to hear new stuff, or do you want to hear the stuff that you like? And it's different from person to person. Go ahead. I'm actually just going to go grab my now cold coffee here. Go ahead.
I think it's definitely something to
sort of classics. But I'm going to start talking about, so I guess the sort of Bruce Springsteens of the world get a sort of exemption. But you mentioned the Eagles and how the rest of the members besides Don Hartley really need this tour to sort of, to pay for the bills. But I think, I guess what I'm pointing out is, the copyright system has sort of put them in this problem because they have to keep doing this as opposed to going out and doing new things or writing new things. They are clinging to this sort of old system, and as a result, only one of them is doing well because not everybody owns the copyright.
Well, that's actually, yeah, that's true. But, usually on the master side, the band splits equally. So whatever they're making in terms of record sales or master use licenses, if there are 5 guys in the band, they generally split them equally unless there's some agreement to the contrary. On the publishing side, it depends on who gets their name on the song. There are fights. We go sometimes, an album will come out, especially in the hip-hop genre, or Eminem, or Mary J. Blige, or these albums will be out 4 years before they get licensed. And why does it take 4 years to license it? Because the writers are all fighting over who wrote what and what percentage they had. Because you have 4 or 5 writers on every song, and they all want 30%. And that adds up to 150. So nobody gets paid for 5 years until they agree on how they wrote it. Now, your comment is, wow, what a bummer. The bass player's not getting any of the publishing money. But if he didn't write the song, then he's not in that equation, but he's still getting, if he's a full-fledged band member, because then he would get 1% of the record side, but no publishing if he didn't write any of the music.
And just one more comment.
Sure.
You earlier said, you made a comment how you think copyright protection should be even longer, because if you write something, you want to be protected. But what about patent law? Patents only last 20 years, and yet people create a lot in the patent world. Inventions and these sort of discoveries happen much faster than I think the music industry functions, because it's only 20 years, and you have to capitalize it in those 20 years. It's always you were always the creator of it, especially in the music world. That means a lot. I think people don't just the fact that who wrote the song. If you brand it right initially, even if people cover you, people are always going to know that it was it's always what the original was. So I think that I think patent law is a perfect comparison when it comes to. That's only 20 years. Everyone will still be alive when their stuff runs out, but yet they still create.
Yeah.
And they invest billions.
There's a great book on that about how every patent that's ever been registered in the United States was stolen from somebody who had already patented it somewhere else. But I forget the name of the book. But listen, if there, I agree with you. I don't know what to say other than that. It is hypocritical that in one sense you get 50 years or 75 years plus life of author plus 75 versus 20 years. It's odd, but I don't know how else I'd respond to that.
So Mike, you've got a lot of people in this room that write songs, and they're probably going to wonder how they can make money without having to get records. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, sure. I was going to make a joke, but I won't. I was going to say a day job would be good, but it's incredibly tough to write a hit record. And my son wants to be a musician too, and I say to him, that's fantastic, so did I. And and everybody in the music industry is a musician on some level. We all wanted to make a living in the music industry, and we weren't good enough or talented enough to actually make it writing music or being a recording artist. And I say that, maybe we weren't lucky. But I say to him, it's incredibly hard to make a living as a musician. So you have to be the best of the best. So if you're a songwriter or a drummer or a bass player, being good's not enough. It never was in the 70s. You have to be extraordinary. You have to work your craft. You have to live and breathe it, and you have to give it everything you've got times 10. And that is what I tell my son. But I also say to him that, making a living at it will be really tough, especially if you're not it's like wanting to be a professional baseball player. millions and millions aspire to it, few actually make a living at it. It's the same thing. But there are many, many people I know who are working musicians who make a living at it. They make, and how do they do it? Production music is one way, like I just said. There are, there are tons of people who some of you might know. You'd probably know some of them, but they were musicians. We just bought a company. 2 years ago, we bought a production music company from a guy who was in a hair metal band in the 80s. And the name of the band, I never heard of them, so you won't, but the name of the band was Keel. And so, and they were signed to a major label, and they were literally a knockoff of like Bon Jovi back in the really long hair, kind of blow-dried days. And they toured in Japan in front of hundreds of thousands of people. They opened up for Bon Jovi, as a matter of fact, on a tour, blah, blah. They never made a dime from any of that. But what this guy went and did was he took all of the music that he had and he created a library. And he did that for 8 to 10 years. He created a library of his own music, and then he sold it to us for a lot of money. And now he's an employee. He actually works for us. He's the president of his own company, and he is just constantly thinking about when he gets to walk off in the sunset because he's made his money. And that's a really great way, especially if you want to make music, right? So if you want to make music, that's actually a good way to go. Continue to make music. And simply because it didn't become #1 or whatever doesn't mean it's not marketable in some way. You have to try to find or search out the marketing aspect of it. Sure.
So we're talking about this idea of like the hit song and writing a hit song, and we mentioned earlier about the industry going full circle from singles to albums to singles. And I guess my question is, like, what does that mean for the publishing aspect of it? Like, do you consider it good, bad, or doesn't matter?
Well, as long as the it's all volume, right? As long as the product is paid for, then we're happy. And only 10 years ago, 65% of the publisher's income was through record sales. 65%. That's 10 years ago. Now it's 35, 30, and in that period of time, our revenues haven't gone down. It's just that now there's more performance and more other income streams, but the actual record sales or downloads or that sort of stuff has gone down quite a bit. So obviously we like to, we actually track, anybody read Billboard magazine? They have this thing in it, a little recap that I look at every week, and it says, here's the total albums that are sold, and then here's the full album downloads that are sold, and then here are the singles. And then they come up with this little thing, they call it TEAs. It's a track equivalent album. So they take 10 or 12 of those singles and they make believe it's an album. So we'll look at those all the time, certainly on the publishing side, because if you look at that, the industry is only down single digits if you consider those track equivalent albums. So, I think it's a good thing that we're getting paid on what we're getting paid, and that we have to continue, lobbying or whatever to save that aspect of our business. Yeah, sure.
Just a quick question. You said that just 10 years ago, 65% of the income was CD sales. Do you maybe this would be kind of a scary question, but do you know, like in the 70s, what percentage of the income was CD sales as opposed to live performance? Because I assume 10 years ago, I think like the 90s.
Yeah.
I was wondering, maybe it's
No, it's all right. So I think, first of all, the 65% is not CD sales, it's mechanicals. So mechanicals could be CD sale, could be a download, whatever. It's whatever we're getting paid for the physical distribution or reproduction in the physical sense of that song. And I think 10 years ago was a microcosm of the 70s. And that's that most of the money back then it might have even been a bit higher, maybe 70%. And it's literally just been in the last 6 years where it's really flipped into the other direction. And the good news is we've had the strength of the other revenues to kind of fill up the hole. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
iTunes, when you register your songs for iTunes, I put 3 CDs on so far, and it's very, very complicated to pay the royalties. I wonder why the industry hasn't figured it out to make it more convenient.
What do you mean to pay the royalties? For iTunes to pay you the royalties?
No, iTunes pays me, I pay the publishing company.
Right.
Very complicated, nickel and dime, 2.5 cents, 3/4 cents.
Well, that's because you're the record company,
Right.
right? Essentially, you're the record company. And this, it only works this way in the US. It's very odd. Everywhere else in the world, the iTunes would pay the publisher directly. In the US, it all flows through the record labels.
And yet,
So
it would be much smarter and
if it was direct.
They would connect fees, right? I mean,
Right.
Harry Fox or something, they tack on their fee.
Yeah. So it would
seems
be,
like so much of the industry's convenience driven, it seems like it would be a lot.
yeah, I got to be honest.
Revenues would go up for the publishers if that happened, I'm sure.
Yeah, here's my first thing to say to all students. It's never a problem to say I don't know or I'm not sure, because I'm not sure. Do you know the answer to this? Do you know why in the US they go through the record companies? I'm sure the record companies wanted it that
Sounds
way.
like RIAA.
Yeah, I'm sure the record companies wanted it that way, but it probably had to do with making life easier for Apple, is all I can.
They have mechanical rights societies in Europe.
Right.
They have mechanical rights societies.
But it's also, I'm sure it also has to do with Apple, because Apple doesn't have the system. They don't care about selling iTunes. What do they want to sell? iPods, iPads. Music, they don't even care what they price it at. The music industry had a fight to get variable pricing, and that turned out to be a big nothing anyway. So, but the interesting thing is they don't have the system set up where they're going to put the name of the publisher of every song in and pay those publishers directly. Forget that. 99 cents, I think 69 cents of it goes to the record label. And is that what you get?
It's something like between
About
60 and
66
65.
cents.
Yeah, something like that goes to the record label, and then the record label has to pay the publishers, right? Because the record labels have that all in their system already, and Apple didn't want to bother doing it. That's why. I'm pretty sure that's the reason why it works that way.
You see, there's a dispute between the record companies and Apple about are the record companies and the artists, is it a distribution fee or a licensing? Are you licensing the track or distributing it?
Right.
That was that case recently with Eminem's people won that case.
Well, it's on appeal.
Well, it's on appeal, of course it's on appeal. But, and also, I want to make a point that Universal raised their prices of CDs in 2009 in order to force Apple to raise the price of the downloads to $29 instead of 99 cents. So they were raising the prices of the CD last year. Now that's why they're not selling anything. I mean, why don't they lower the prices? I mean, is it really a $19 price point?
Well, no, that's a retail price point. Wholesale is tremendously lower than that. And that's the other thing. Everybody always thinks the record companies are the devil, right? $19.99 CD. Who would pay that? That was the retail store asking for $19.99. As a matter of fact, there was a period of, I think the wholesale price back when it was $19.99 retail, the wholesale was $10. So the retail guy was trying to get 100% markup, right? And so what the record labels did, and this is in 2004, is they actually did this little project. They called it Jumpstart. They wanted to jumpstart CD sales. So they did this project. They called it Jumpstart, and they took the $10 wholesale and they lowered it to $8. It didn't matter because the retail guys did not change the retail price, and that's what they knew. They were 5 minutes from shutting Tower and Virgin Megastore and all those things, and they were just in a last-minute land grab, and so none of the retail prices changed, and everybody was like, "Oh, the record industry, is $19.99. That's ridiculous." It was all retail, and that's why they're all gone, except for Best Buy or Kmart. Or where do you go to buy a CD now? I go to Amazon.com personally, but if you need a storefront, it's I think the 3 biggest clients of the music industry now are Target, Walmart, and Best Buy, and they're all loss leaders. They put the CDs in there just so you'll buy electronics.
They're cutting them
Or
out, and a lot of places are cutting down the depth, which was pretty narrow anyway.
right,
And they're finding the shelf space is a lot better, return on DVDs.
right.
Actually,
So
they're
Walmart
now
particularly.
it's iPhone accessories or iPod accessories. That's what they're selling instead of CDs at Walmart. They're taking product out of Walmart and putting in disc accessories for iPhone now.
I do think it's an oversimplification to say that's what caused the record industry to fail. I mean, Virgin was saying there was 150,000 titles they're supposed to be responsible for, just the size of the inventory. lot of reasons.
I didn't say that's what caused the record industry to fail. No, the record industry. Let me ask this girl right back here.
Can you just
You know.
tell me about, like, the Jonas Brothers, Miley Cyrus are kind of packaged artists in a way? I feel like, you know, like Miley Cyrus had her TV show, and then you must get tons of money from performances on what those, you know, like the audience that they reach out to.
Right.
And you know, before Lady Gaga was famous, she was a singer-songwriter on the piano, and she's very talented. She kind of totally changed her identity just so she could become a pop star. So how would you say that that affects the music industry and how much money comes into you guys through these kind of, I don't want to call them fake artists, but I think you know what I'm getting.
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, I am. It depends on who you ask, right? But you asked me, so I'll give you my answer. I'm not a fan of American Idol, I mean, initially I was, but I think that stuff has, and it's just my opinion, it's cheapened music. It's like, you know, so you want to be a star, you know, or all these shows, you know, it's gone to a level where, you know, the band in their garage sweating, you know, writing lyrics about, you know, the darkness in their lives, and, you know, you need that kind, you know, I mean, a lot of music was stimulated, or the creative aspect was stimulated through people having to work hard to perfect their craft and struggle to get to be noticed and that sort of thing. And I don't know, American Idol just seems to, you know, that's what the music industry has become. You know, now there's a big fight every season of who's going to sign, you know, which artists. We signed, I can't even remember. No, yeah, the guy who won last year. No, the guy who beat Adam Lambert. What was his name? Anybody remember? See, of course not.
Not as good as
Everybody remembers Adam Lambert. The guy who beat Adam Lambert, we signed. I don't think he's put it. Chris Allen. Yes, we signed him.
Live like you're dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Live like, was that one of his songs?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he put out an album. It's over already. It's over. It's kind of like.
Consciously balance between, okay, we have these kind of packaged artists, now let's sign someone who actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. That's a great question. Yes, publishing, we do everything. We try to get the little, the flash in the pan. We try to sign the developing artist. You know, somebody signed a developing artist and work with them for years until they finally get a record deal and then do this. We sign established people who have their own publishing rights. We sign a guy who's got one album available and the album's out, it hasn't come out, all over the map. Because we, you know, Universal, and I think a lot of the publishers feel this way, to be a complete music publisher, you need the whole spectrum because you're trying to create a situation where there's no scenario that you don't have somebody you could plug them into. So if somebody's looking for the next TV star, I got that person. If somebody's looking for the next great singer-songwriter, I got this guy. You always want a situation where you have a product to put into a situation. So we do all that, you know, what was the old adage about publishing and record companies was that 5% of the winners pay for 95% of the losers, and that's really still pretty much true. Yeah.
What generally comes first, or do they happen at the same time, the publishing deal or the record deal?
That's a great question too. It depends on the publisher and the record company, I guess. If you got a record deal, and then you're going to get a publishing deal.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. So if you're signed to a record company, all of a sudden, you know, if the record company's got you on a release schedule, and then the next thing you know, all the publishers are saying, they're all sitting back going, all right, I've heard it, how many records I think it's going to sell, try to come up with, which is actually what I'm going to do if I teach this music business finance course. What's that worth to a publishing company, right? So the record company signs a guy, and then the publishing becomes available. How much do I give him? What do I offer him? It's kind of like a cool little project to do to figure out what's it worth to us. So that happens 80% of the time. 20% of the time, they get signed first on the publishing side and then get uploaded to the label. Why is that? Because first of all, because the record company guys are arrogant. Yeah, John knows, they're arrogant. If they didn't sign it first, it can't be good, right? Because how did I miss it? You know, and not only that, a lot of times the record company guys look at the publishing guys like, you know, those are the minor leagues. Well, that used to be the way it is. It's probably different now because, you know, they're struggling and we're not. But that's really the way it was. It's like, you know, the record company guys are like, yeah, you know, so it takes a lot to develop an artist on this side and actually get them a record deal. It still happens all the time. We have a girl who's signed to us. You can find her on the internet if you don't know it already. Her name's Tamar, Tamar. Tamar, yeah. She worked with who? Prince? No. There's probably a few Tamars out there then. Her name is Tamar. Anyway, she entered a contest. This is a great thing for the musicians out there. An online contest to do a band's song over. And, oh God, it might have been All American Rejects or whatever. One of those bands had a song, so they held a contest online, and people submitted their YouTube videos, and whoever, you know, and she was signed to us. And she decided, you know, she had gone a couple of years signed to us, no prospects, no record company deal. She entered this thing online and she won it. And that didn't get her anything. I think it got her, you know, to meet the band. You know, it was nothing. But out of that, the record company signed her. The record company took notice, and out of that, she got like 1 million hits on her YouTube site because of on the video of her doing the cover song. And from that, you know, the record companies signed. So that's another way if you're looking to monetize, now that I think about it. You know, interestingly, YouTube is an incredible tool. I mean, I think many of the record companies, you know, rather than in the old days, they'd send guys out to clubs, and they'd be out in clubs till 5 o'clock in the morning listening to bands and deciding which ones they liked. They still do that, but a lot less. They go on YouTube or MySpace, if that's still relevant, or any of those sites where people can upload their own stuff, listen to it, see who's getting the most hits, and follow it and track it that way till it's something they're interested in.
That's it. I have a question related to YouTube.
By the way, what's your name?
Zach.
Zach. Mike. Nice to meet you.
I'm wondering, and I know the RIAA represents the record labels, and I'm kind of wondering if they also represent the publishers, because I know currently the RIAA was lobbying to get the Combating Online Infringement and Counterfeiting Act through Congress, which actually got tabled and is not going to be voted on yet. And I'm kind of wondering what the publishing perspective is on that act, mainly because if that had been in place before, YouTube would not exist.
Right.
And you just admitted YouTube is, and it is a fantastic tool. And things like YouTube and these other sort of amazing content aggregators would be completely void if this was passed. And I'm just wondering, what's the publishing take on it? Are you not affiliated with the RIAA? And what are they thinking?
Okay, great questions, by the way. So the RIAA is the Recording Industry Association of America, and then the publishers have the NMPA, which is the National Music Publishers Association. No problem. And a lot of times they work together, especially in areas of piracy or trying to compel the ISPs to pay a tax to defray all the piracy and that sort of thing. A lot of times they work together to because they have common goals, and they obviously, we all want to be paid for music. We all want, you know, those sites that are illegal to be taken down and blah blah blah. So NMPA, RIA work hand in hand a lot, and also work against each other a lot when they're on different sides of the table. YouTube example, I think we also have the publishing for Avril Lavigne. She had a song called Girlfriend? Boyfriend? What's the name of it?
Girlfriend.
Girlfriend. 40 million hits? I think we got $2,000 for that. 40 million hits. Why? Because how does YouTube work? Think about it. I mean, I love YouTube. As a technology, it's off the chart. Do I use it every minute of the day? Absolutely. Who doesn't? You know. Actually, I remember the first thing I ever looked at was the Zapruder film. You can find it 20 different speeds on YouTube. It's amazing. So 40 million views, $2,000. Do you think that's a tragedy?
Well, I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. It depends on what you think the economic effect of 40 million views has. Besides the royalties, the royalties being paid were $2,000. However, are you also implying that was all that came from 40 million?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely a promotional value. Absolutely right. But I find 2,000, almost entirely free promotion, 40 million views, $2,000. It boggles the mind.
Now, YouTube is now making deals. It used to be that the copyright holders would call YouTube and say, take down our stuff. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, okay, what if we put an ad up here and split the revenue?
Yeah, well, that's how you get $2,000 eventually.
That's how you
right?
got it?
No, we have a deal with YouTube now.
So that's where your 2,000 is coming
But
from.
what does YouTube do? They say, okay, here's our total advertising money. Can't be a lot, right? It's just banners. This is what we make in advertising, multiplied by a fraction. The numerator is 40 million, and the denominator is YouTube. I mean, so you wind up with $2,000. Now, I agree 100% with your promotional value, but isn't radio promotion too? Do you think that a songwriter shouldn't get paid for public performance?
But we've already talked about how radio is going out.
It's not going out. It's terrestrial radio is going down. Pandora is a legitimate site. They pay. Satellite radio, any satellite radio stations you listen to.
Different Pandoras online, that they all specialize in something different. I mean, like every time I stumble, I get all that Pandora website, like.
Oh, really?
Many, and it's like.
Oh, you mean Pandora knockoff sites?
Yeah, like not.
Oh, and they're probably not licensed too. I don't know,
Exactly. I mean, that's just.
But Pandora, so use the real Pandora. It's licensed at least.
Yeah,
What
it's
about the act, though?
What about the, yeah.
Do you have any opinion on the act?
No, because I'm not too familiar with it, but I can tell you this. What do you say?
I said neither is the Congress.
Yeah, well, I can say this, that for a long time, the NMPA and the RIAA have been lobbying. I mean, believe it or not, I've been at fundraisers with Nancy Pelosi and everybody else, and they come, and it's all music industry people, and they go, and they start talking about all the good things that they're doing and da-da-da, and they never once mention music. And so one time, I didn't have the nerve, let's say, to ask it, but I was dying to raise my hand and say, what about us? And so what's been happening is these lawsuits, these acts, various permutations of them, been going on for 7 years, 8 years. And now we're going to get into a big political discussion. The part of the problem is, radio broadcasters are, they're lobbying the government one way, freedom of speech, lobbying the government the other way, the line wires, it's all tied up in the government machine. And then you get to this guy who you want him to push this through Congress, and he's got 20 people in every interested area of the business pulling him in a different direction, and they wind up doing nothing. So, I mean, this is conspiracy theory, yeah. But I think eventually, there was a great article, I still read Rolling Stone, believe it or not, even though it's this thick now and smaller. One article about music and the whole thing, but there was a great article a couple ago, and the article was titled, How to Save the Music Industry? I don't know if anybody saw it, but it was actually written by the guy who is U2's manager.
Well, that was in GQ.
No, I actually even have it with me.
Paul McGinnis.
Paul McGinnis. It's in Rolling Stone. I have it in my. It's in your office. So it was called How to Save the Music Industry. But the interesting thing is a lot of the ideas are not new, and a lot of them are tied up in that bill, trying to get the ISPs to police piracy, and for goodness sakes, they can't even police porn. How can they police piracy? And I don't think they want to. They want to stimulate traffic through the internet. So,
I think that's interesting. Two comments. Earlier, you had said that Google's ad revenues. I mean, what are they? But I mean, Google Google nets billions of dollars.
YouTube's, I said.
I know, but YouTube's
Oh.
owned by Google.
Oh, okay, right.
So-
Well, Google's got a lot more revenues than YouTube.
Yeah, okay, so.
Yeah.
Next point, I think that was a very perfect point.
Yeah.
Because you said they couldn't even,
Regulate it, yeah.
Regulate it, but that industry is just, I mean, like, the amount of money that goes into that industry is ridiculous.
Well, you're wrong.
Actually,
It's getting
down.
destroyed.
Is it going down?
Actually, the pornography is really losing out because that's.
Getting destroyed. It's all free. It's you look at it, actually. This is a microcosm of the internet, which is really the devil. The internet. This is a whole nother class I'm going to teach. This is a whole nother class I want to teach called "The Internet is the Devil." Think of the value destruction caused by the internet. It's exactly right. Nobody buys porn anymore. They go online and get it for free. Nobody buys music anymore. People don't buy books anymore. Why do you think Rolling Stone magazine is this big? They go online and they get it for free.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of like a.
But it's because they have to do that. They've all actually, interestingly, I think they all looked at the music industry and they said, it's going to happen. I don't want to be left in the cold. So they all jumped ahead. I mean, the New York Times, I canceled my subscription. I don't get it anymore.
Charging next year.
Are they going to charge you online next year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because right now they don't charge you online. So I canceled my subscription. They cost themselves a subscription and traded it in for whatever they're getting on the banner ad from having me on the website. It's way less, but the thing is they know eventually I'll be there anyway. They get you there free, and then they charge you $3 and you're like, well, whatever. $3. You know, it's a smart way to do it. They make it stick, you get there, and then and that becomes your way of life. And you move that way, and there are so many business. You can't even be a mailman anymore. Look what's happened to mail. The internet has completely destroyed value in the mailman.
Yeah, but mail is not the private sector. I mean, like, that's.
Well, I'm just using it as an example of the destruction of value that happens through. By the way, I'm not saying the internet's a bad thing. It's
No,
it's
definitely.
created value. It's destroyed value. It's just a paradigm shift in the world. And I'm just saying, if you're aspiring to be a postal worker, it's probably not going to happen because they're probably laying off more people than they're going to hire.
10 years from now, what do you think the implications are for music being
Oh, I don't think it'll be virtually free.
I mean, but just.
I mean, through iTunes, just in the U.S., I think we sell 15 million downloads a week. That's a lot. It's not, and it's still going up, although it's flattening. And some of the more recent press has been that the download in the U.S. is kind of plateauing. So I think 10 years from now, it's almost the same way it was when CDs came out. What happened when CDs came out? Everybody bought CDs. Now everybody buys MP3s. And then you had your Anglophiles. You had your guys who still bought vinyl because they wanted to have that collection. You'll have your audiophiles, people who still want 5.1 surround sound, you know, remixed. I want the best stereo in the world in my house. Because MP3 is cheap in music too, you know. I mean, they're meant, I would smash it to bits, except I need it when I'm jogging. This is when I listen to MP3s. It's the only time. When I'm sitting at home, I won't put my iPod in one of those things. That's not music. But that's me. That's me. I like surround sound, best stereo in the world. I'm from that generation, I guess. So I see 10 years from now being an almost entirely digital business, but with a smaller subset of it physical in some way, but the storefronts will all be virtual, and you know, and much more integration with mobile, and hopefully by that time there is a agreement, which I think this act that you were talking about goes towards, which I've said this for 10 years, is that ISPs need to be taxed because they're allowing the traffic to free sites. They don't police it. They don't do anything to, as a matter of fact, they make it easier. So I think a percentage of their revenue needs to go to And I'm not just talking about music. It's not a self-serving request. It's music or books, printed media, porn, anything where you own content and it's being illegally trafficked through the internet. Yep. Zach.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike.
Just wanted to make sure I remembered your name.
You mentioned the virtual storefront. I feel like that can only be, I guess there's sort of two things. One, I think the savior might end up being the phone apps, because people are paying for phone apps, which is kind of, because it's only like if you buy like $1, like for instance, even Groove Shark, you have to pay to get its phone app, and that online is free. So I think phone apps, and Chris Anderson wrote an article about, he originally wrote the long tail piece, and now he wrote an article about how people aren't just using the internet, they're using they're not using the net, they're using these phone apps which use the internet, and they oftentimes pay for these phone apps. So I think there is some revenue there, and I think there has to be something to this virtual storefront, because there's no liability of inventory, there's no cost of goods sold, everything is just like, I mean, if you sell 1 million or you sell 1, the cost is the same, which is something that can't be said for physical sales. There's no risk. Like, for instance, the industry, and I'm not sure if this is still the case because of the way the current physical sales market, but I know in the past they would have to do a buyback guarantee on the records, and that's pretty asinine if you consider that, I mean, like, that, and it also misrepresents the platinum records, because you can sell them all on a buyback as long as you have a big enough paycheck to get them back. So
Right.
I think that I think the virtual storefront is awesome, and I think the phone apps are going to really pull in some revenue. So I don't think the internet is going to.
Well, again, it's a as I said, it's a paradigm shift, right? It's a change in the world. In the old days, when you had to go to Tower Records to buy a record, all those albums were sold to Tower with the right of return. I don't even think there was a buyback percentage. I think, here's $1 million. If you only sell 900,000, I'll take the other 100,000 back. They wanted them on the shelves.
Oh no, it's even worse than that. They would ship them to the distributor, to the outlet, and never put them in the stores. So to get the gold records, then you could get a gold.
Oh yeah, and then you ship gold, it returns platinum. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you had all those kinds of games going on, but but a lot of times it would have been done for shelf space, and I always wondered, I mean, how's John Cougar Mellencamp popular? I don't mean that in a bad way, but I actually, I mean he's good. I like John Cougar. But the record company, but somebody decided, we're going to promote this guy. We're going to put a lot of money behind him. He's going to have shelf space. You're going to go into the stores. There are going to be things dangling from the ceilings and big cardboard cutouts of John Cougar. How could you avoid it? How do you not buy it? And back then, I don't want to say the word manipulate, but you could manipulate to whatever you thought was the right way to go. Now, you didn't need to do all that promotion and whatnot if it was a new Lady Gaga album next week, because people are going to buy it. But when they wanted to break an act, it was way easier. Now you're right, everybody's equal, almost, in a sense. So, you only go to the store to buy it if you know what you're going to buy. There's no interactive kind of moment where you're flipping through, or like I used to do, and maybe John used to do, where you actually bought an album simply because you liked the cover. I mean, I did that I found so much great music that way when I was your age.
A lot of times they're really great records.
You too. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out. You, me, and John. That's right. No, but I'm serious. I mean, I bought something, but now that yeah, you're right. So actually, you lose the shelf space aspect. It makes everybody equal, and therefore, what is different in value from one to the other? It almost also cheapens everything to the lowest common denominator.
But you could use that same power to still advertise, because I mean, now the impulse buying rate I think is increased, because for instance, if the record label still push an artist that wouldn't normally get that would, in the old days he would get shelf space, today he just gets massive promotion. You can do things like, you can put up posters or something where I'm walking and they have those little QR codes,
right,
and I can just buy it right there and not even think about it. And I think that's pretty powerful, psychologically, to be able to, you don't even think about it, complete impulse buy, and you don't even worry about it. Because I mean, I'm not changing money, it ends up on my phone bill later, and then I go, oh.
Right.
But at the time, I'm just click.
Right.
Like you said, what's $3?
Yeah.
You're not gonna think anything
Once
else,
you
right?
get there,
So
yeah.
I think this is a pretty massive opportunity.
Yeah, but there have been so many opportunities like that. I'd say in the last 4 years, every month, there's been the latest flavor of the month that's going to be the savior. We finally found the answer. Nokia comes with music. You know, Spotify. Well, but all of these were like the answer when they were first designed or come out. And so far, none of them have really been the answer. They've all created a little bit of revenue stream, and kind of like the product life cycle was gone. And so I think that continues, back to your question, I think that continues to happen for the next 10 years until, you know, you find that subset or 2 or 3 things that click with everyone and work in this generation, you know. So, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, I had one.
Sure.
For digital distribution, say if you feel like you have a hit single, or a record label comes to you and say that you feel like your single is really hot, what are the stipulations between, you know, the artist and record label as far as digital distribution, iTunes, Amazon?
Right. Well, I think it's pretty standard if you're just going to sell a song through iTunes, but the real answer is, if you've got something and a record company is going to distribute it and you're wondering what the deal is, you need to get yourself a lawyer or a friend who knows how to negotiate with the record company. But generally speaking, if it's just going to be stuff that's sold through iTunes, I think the model is 99 cents, 60-something cents comes to you as the content owner, and from that you have to pay the publishers. And the rest of it you keep.
Does it work like if they do like, if you sign a distribution deal with a record company, does it give you a title that has to play on the radio, or is it just distributed?
Yeah, a lot of times in a typical distribution deal with the record company, they'll do exactly that, distribute. You know, it all depends on what contractually you agree to, but they may agree to, you know, exploit, license, market, promote.
It used to be what they call P&D deals.
Right.
It was pressing and distribution, so they did not market. And then you could also move up a notch and give up more of your money, and you could get market. So we're probably going to have to close it down. It's getting close towards 5 o'clock. Any last question, maybe?
Well, this was.
Summarize publishing in a word or in a sentence. Business does.
In a word?
Publishing.
Did you plant that question? In a word.
No, in a sentence.
You can use the whole sentence,
What?
You can use a word.
Boy, this is going to be one incredibly long run-on sentence. No, publishing is a relatively stable, scalable business. Which is not which is not perfectly correlated to what you read about the music industry. It's sorry.
Or the actual term to publish.
Well, yeah, I think that's a term handed down in the ages. You know, I think it had to do back when publishers were probably principally associated with sheet music, which is still,
Public.
Yeah.
yeah,
Not a big deal.
yeah, but you know, and sheet music is maybe 2% of our revenues now. It's not a lot. Mainly, we just sell to schools, like you know, and anyway. So sorry. I mean, that was a good question because I have no idea. If I was asked that again, I'd probably be answered entirely differently.
So
Thanks.
thank Mike Sammis.
Thank you, everybody. This was fun. Thanks.